June 14th. Really? Today? Huh. It sure has been a while since I updated this journal, hasn't it? I suppose being bedridden for weeks would cause that, though it's still a bit disappointing. After my humiliation by that horde of Alpha Zorua, the Security Corps managed to safely escort me back to Jubilife. Though much to my dismay, the shiny had disappeared by the time they found me. Cyllene was furious, which surprised me, considering her cold demeanor. While it is quite touching to see that she does care about me, her insistence about me staying in Jubilife and recovering has really been diminishing my ability to continue my research. Apparently, that large amount of Alpha Zorua was part of a massive mass outbreak, a recent anomaly. Mai, a warden of the Diamond Clan, has taken charge of investigating these outbreaks. So I made a deal with Cyllene that instead of continuing to hunt for shiny alphas, I would temporarily work with Mai on researching massive mass outbreaks until my injury is healed. Luckily for me, it seems I wouldn't have to pursue them, as in our expeditions to the Mirelands, Highlands, and Coastlands, I made some miraculous finds. According to Mai, a couple of weeks ago, her partner Munchlax began acting rather strangely. After inexplicably running away, she found him in the Fieldlands, curiously obsessed with a Zorua. Before, Zorua were usually only found in the Alabaster Icelands. That's where Alec met his. But after encountering that one in the Fieldlands, Mai began seeing more. These Zorua, however, were not alone. Multiple hordes of many species of Pokemon began popping up all over the place in what Mai deemed massive mass outbreaks, or MMOs. Though curiously, they only appear during severe thunderstorms. On top of that, in an unprecedented phenomenon, these outbreaks have a chance of spawning multiple Alpha Pokémon. And it seems that is what I came upon when I found the Shiny Alpha Zorua. We needed to investigate these MMOs more, but to avoid a repeat of the Zorua incident, Mai insisted that we first venture to the Crimson Mirelands. I wanted to protest, but seeing as Melly, another Diamond Clan warden, reported spotting a massive mass outbreak in the Mirelands, it seemed like the best option. As we arrived at the Galaxy Team's base camp, we did indeed find a raging storm encompassing the entire region, and Melly rushed out from under safe cover to greet us. He spouted some nonsense about the Pokemon gathering to praise him or something. I'm not sure. I wasn't really listening. But he did very kindly give us some Aguav berries. Apparently, these Aguav berries are normally quite a rarity in Hisui, but certain Pokemon in these MMOs have been carrying them. Info that might help us in our research. After Melly left to get out of the downpour, we discussed how to best divvy up the outbreak. outbreaks. Because my injuries would make traversing through the thick muck of the various bogs quite difficult, Mai volunteered to survey the outbreaks in the northeastern half of the area, leaving me with the mud-free area stretching from the Golden Lowlands down to the home of Trials. As I made my way southbound, clearing out one outbreak of Yanma and passing by an Alpha Ursa ring protecting its young, I crested a ridge near the Gatejaw Bog and saw something sparkly and pink? It was a Shiny Alpha Pachirisu. Unfortunately, I was a little too zealous in rushing up to it, as it spotted me and began summoning arcing fields of electricity. But after running far enough away to rid its ire, I was able to more stealthily approach and keep myself safe. A single berry and Pokeball was all it took, and after taking a moment to catch my breath, I headed back to camp to show my find to Mai. While she was not pleased with my blatant disregard for my health, Mai did concede that this was a great discovery. Like the Togepi, this Pachirisu instantly calmed upon capture, adorably showing off its fluffy tail. As I observed the glorious squirrel with Mai, I did notice that this specimen seemed to have less coloration on its forehead than others I'd seen, though my mind didn't linger on that for long. All I could think about was if my next Shiny Alpha would be from a massive Mass Outbreak. When we returned to Jubilife Village, I barely had enough time to drop my new find at the pastures when a man approached with a message from Adam, Mai's little brother. He told us that a storm had formed over the entirety of the Coronet Highlands, and hordes of Alpha Pokémon were terrorizing some unprepared villagers gathering materials. Mai and I rushed to the Highlands at once, where we were greeted by Adaman and Sabi, yet another Diamond Clan warden. Apparently, she had a vision of someone running for their life from multiple Alpha Pokémon, and she barely arrived in time to save them. I wanted to learn more about her clairvoyance, but that was not the time, as Mai rushed to the summit of the mountain, asking me to work my way through the outbreaks at the base to hopefully converge in the middle. I immediately began gathering my things to prepare to set out towards the Wayward Cave, the beginning of the long trek up the mountain. But before I left, Adaman made sure to give me some ingredients for sticky globs, a wonderful projectile that is immensely useful in stunning Pokemon that have spotted you. As I emerged from the Wayward Cave into the beginning of the Sonorous Path, I was immediately met with an outbreak of Duskull, a ghost type. It was relatively trivial to clear out, and I even found a shiny for my troubles. But it seems this outbreak had a surprise for me. I was about to leave the area, but as I heard an unexpected scream, I turned around and saw something terrifying. An entire horde of Alpha Duskull. Just like with the Pachirisu, I immediately ran far enough away for the Duskull to cease chasing, and despite every muscle in my body screaming at me to keep running, I slowly crept my way back closer, staying hidden in the grass. I attempted to catch one of them, since I needed to do something to prevent these enormous Pokemon from running rampant, but it was futile. And after the second attempt, the Spectre had finally spotted me, letting forth another guttural scream. I immediately started pelting it as much as I could with the sticky globs, and miraculously, they stunned it, and it stayed in the very next Pokemon. Not only that, but none of the other Duskull fully noticed my presence, and so I was able to catch them with little difficulty, other than my shaking hand and racing heart. After clearing out that outbreak, my body yearned for rest, but I couldn't stop, I knew there were more outbreaks to get to further up along the path. Passing around the small hill above the ancient quarry, I quickly reached the rockier part of the highlands, entering the Celestica Trail. As I cleared out 2 outbreaks along the trail, I recognized the surrounding cliffs, and realized that this was where I had found my Shiny Alpha Steelix. Curiously, where that Steelix once stood, and where normally an Alpha Steelix always rested, there was nothing. Perhaps the nearby Rhydon outbreak scared it away. Maybe something to investigate further later. Following the Celestica Trail led me up to the mountain camp, around halfway up the peak. By the time I reached the camp, the storm had started to calm, but Mai was still nowhere to be found. I decided to continue up the mountain to look for her, in case she had injured herself. The rest of the highlands unfortunately steepened quite dramatically, but there were some smaller climbs nearby that I used to try to reach the Clamber Claw Cliffs. While looking around for a better way up further, however, I stumbled upon this. It was difficult to tell at first, but this Alpha Gabite was very clearly a more vibrant color than the nearby Gibble, and it also had a strange chip in its dorsal fin. I hid in the nearby grass to assess this monstrous beast as fog rolled in, but I needed to act fast. I still had no idea whether Mai was okay. Unfortunately, before I could attempt to catch it, the Gabite spotted me and knocked me to the ground, removing any element of surprise. I rushed back to my feet and quickly pulled out my Pokeballs, attempting to steady my shaking hand. The Great Ball bounced off, of course, since the Gabite had spotted me, but I was luckily able to quickly switch to the Sticky Globs and stun it before it could attack. Dodging over the waves of shifting ground the Gibble was sending my way, I managed to hit the Shiny Alpha Gabite with a backstrike, catching it on the first ball. For a split second I was paralyzed, but the Gibble quickly brought me back, forcing me to flee as its last Earth power chased me down, eventually fading away. As I stopped and caught my breath, processing how close of a call that was, Mai came running down from the Celestica ruins. We rushed back to the safety of the Highlands camp, and there she told me what had happened. Apparently, there were quite a few more outbreaks in the northern half of the area, explaining her delay, and so she was returning to the base camp just in time to see me sneaking up on the Gabite. She actually was quite impressed at how, despite my panic, I was able to dodge the attacks of both the Gabite and the nearby Gibble. She was now willing to vouch for me to start researching by myself again, and so we returned to Jubilife to speak with Cyllene. It seems my recovery was perfect timing, as Cyllene informed us that 2 massive mass outbreaks recently appeared in both the Cobalt Coastlands and the Alabaster Icelands. I was sent to the coast as Mai took the Icy Barrens, and my goal was clear to me. Find more outbreaks of all alphas. Learning more about how these outbreaks work would be the first step towards finding that Shiny Alpha Zorua again. Unfortunately for me, this massive mass outbreak seemed to have nothing for me. After clearing outbreak after outbreak, there were no alphas to be found. It seems that waves of alpha Pokemon are quite rare, as the only thing of interest in the MMO itself was a Glameow outbreak with a subsequent horde of Purugly, its evolution. Luckily, this expedition wasn't a total bust, as once again a static alpha Pokemon shined for me. Though, this one was a bit different. This Mantine was very clearly an alpha, as it had the characteristic glowing red eyes and massive size. but it seemed to carry the same behaviors as others of its species, as all it did was peacefully glide in and out of the water. Even as I attempted to catch it, drawing the anger of the nearby Remoraid, it continued to meander, blissfully unaware of my presence, until I finally managed to hit and catch it. While it is a new, intriguing Shiny Alpha, this Mantine could not sate my hunger for a Shiny Alpha from a massive Mass Outbreak. I do not remember when I found that Mantine, but since that day, I have been exclusively searching for more MMOs. Day in and day out, I have been looking to the sky, waiting for the next thunderstorm. I must have gotten quite lucky finding both the hordes of Alpha Zorua and Duskull, as over and over again, all I could find were normal Pokémon with secondary hordes of their evolutions. That is, until today. As I arrived in the Mirelands this morning, I was quite lucky to find a storm already brewing, with multiple outbreaks once again spread all over the map. I decided to circle the map and work my way through each of the outbreaks, starting with heading north towards the usual territory of an Alpha Raichu. Strangely, just like with the Steelix in the Highlands, the Raichu was nowhere to be found, a horde of Rhyhorn in its stead. Unfortunately, catching all of the Rhyhorn led to nothing, so I proceeded across the river and ascended the cliff below the Cloudpool Ridge. I would not, however, reach the next outbreak as quickly as I intended, as something quite unexpected interrupted. This Shiny Alpha Roserade was yet another incredible find, but I did not have the time to sit and admire it. I caught it as quickly as possible and immediately moved on to the next outbreak. One by one, I cleared out the hordes, my hopes for a wave of alphas slowly dwindling. Moving across Lake Valor and down the eastern side of the Mirelands, I once again found a missing solitary alpha Pokémon, this time a Yanmega, replaced by a throng of Hippopotas. This was actually a Pokémon I wanted to study further, as it exhibits an unusual case of sexual dimorphism among its species, but my main focus was on whether this outbreak would have a secondary wave. Luckily for me, it did, and not only that, but it was a wave of entirely alpha Hippopotas. This is the opportunity I had been looking for weeks, and I did not intend to waste it. I began experimenting with the outbreak and the hippos, trying to learn their behavior. Most alphas I had encountered before were nearly entirely secluded and incredibly territorial, so I desperately tried to learn what caused entire hordes of them to appear. It seemed as if they were a temporary phenomenon, as when I left the area to stock up on supplies and return, the normal Hippopotas had taken their original place. I began to test the non-alpha Hippopotas, trying to see what caused the alpha ones to appear. This time, I attempted to dispel the sand dwellers by knocking them out with my recently acquired Mantine. But as the alphas came back for the second time, the sky began to yellow, indicating the setting sun and imminent end of the massive Mass Outbreak. I quickly entered a battle with 3 of the behemoths and attempted to knock them out, but the final remaining one nearly took out my Mantine, so I was forced to retreat. As I did, however, a new color of Hippopotas appeared. This was very clearly a Shiny Alpha, though I had difficulty telling which form it was at a glance, so I caught it as quickly as I could while dodging the attacks of another alpha and brought it back to camp to show to Professor Lavington. In my excitement, however, I had completely forgotten about my time limit, and as I rushed back to the spot of the outbreak to try to get any more information, the sun set and the storm ceased. I knew the hippopotas had most likely dispersed, but I had to double check, and I am very glad I did, as upon my return, an Alpha Yanmega had taken back its rightful place. But this one was shiny. I touched down to get a good look, as I now no longer had to rush, and realized that this was the third Shiny Alpha I had found today. Considering the rarity and frequency of the Shiny Alphas I found before, I'm quite fortunate. This may be the last instance of anything like this ever happening. I had lost track of time in my eagerness to find more massive mass outbreaks, but maybe this was the universe trying to remind me of the dead. 3 Shiny Alphas does seem pretty fitting as a birthday present. As I wrap up this entry, all I can think about is that Shiny Alpha Zorua. I plan to continue my study of these outbreaks, but this time in the Alabaster Icelands. Even though I found that Zorua in an outbreak in the Fieldlands the first time, I suspect I'll have more luck finding it again in the Icelands, since that is the usual territory for its species. I also plan to investigate how sexual dimorphism manifests in different species. That hippopotas was in fact a female, and I have since learned that the small changes I noticed in the Pachyrisu's stripe and Gabite's fin could perhaps be more subtle examples of this kind of dichotomy. Lying here in bed, struggling to fall asleep, however, the sheer amount of research ahead looms dauntingly over me. I worry what might happen if I get injured again, and wonder if the risk is even worth it. I want to show people that Pokemon aren't to be feared, and yet, I nearly lost my life multiple times today. I dream of a day when people and Pokemon can live together in harmony, but maybe that's all it is. Just a dream.